Okay, I have recently seen a video by Wes Huff. It was actually put out in May 22nd, so that's a while back. Covers a lot of points. I'm just going to cover the first point. Um, I think it's very interesting a point that he brings out. And please excuse me if we've got a couple little kitty cats in the house and they're kind of roaming around right now having fun. Um, okay, so I'm going to show you this. Let's see, 124. And because he says that he engaged in an online discussion with a Muslim, and he said he argued that Mark's gospel is the earliest written, and as such, Jesus is a fully human, non divine figure. By the time we get to John, what he reckoned was the latest written gospel, let's see here, only then is Jesus understood as God incarnate. In other words, his argument was that there's a progression in time with the belief of Jesus' divinity. Here's how I answered by walking through the Gospel of Mark for him, showing how Jesus is referred to as divine in every chapter. And of course, that's his own opinion. And I would disagree with him on that, but he brings out an interesting point. And I'm going to comment on that. I might comment more on the video later, but it's getting late and I'm getting tired. I got to get up in the morning for work. So, but let's look at this first part. Now he's going to be talking about Mark chapter 1.
Gospel of Mark is the earliest gospel. I'm fine with that for argument's sake. But you mentioned that you did not think that Jesus was portrayed as divine in Mark's gospel, and that's where I think you're fundamentally incorrect. In fact, I would argue that Mark's gospel portrays a more divine Jesus than even John's gospel, which you said is the development to the later gospels, where Jesus is really human early on, and then he becomes this divine figure. I'm going to prove you wrong by going chapter by chapter through the book of Mark. Okay, so Mark chapter 1, John the Baptist makes straight the path for who? It's Jesus, right? In Mark chapter 1, verse 3, it says, "As it was written in Isaiah the prophet, behold, I send my messenger before your face, who will prepare your way, a voice of one crying in the wilderness, prepare the way for the Lord, make his path straight." If you go back to what he's quoting, it's Isaiah chapter 40, verse 3. It says, "A voice of one calling, prepare the way for Yahweh in the wilderness, make a straight highway for your God in the desert." Now, when you hear Mark setting that up and saying that Isaiah the prophet says, "Behold, I send a messenger before your face," you're expecting Jesus to prepare the way for Yahweh, but that's not what he says is happening. It's John the Baptist preparing the way for Jesus. Who is he saying Jesus is if he's quoting Isaiah chapter 40, verse 3, where a way is prepared for Yahweh, but John the Baptist is preparing a way for Jesus? He's saying that Jesus is Yahweh. Mark.
Okay, so he's using this instance in Mark. He's jumping around here, and I'll explain it. I'll try to explain it a little bit more clearly because certainly Wes believes that Jesus is Yahweh, which I respectfully disagree with. Now remember, although someone disagrees with us, doesn't mean we got to hate the person. Okay, we can maybe hate the logic or something, but it doesn't mean we hate the person. Jesus told us to love our neighbor as ourselves, right? So, and he laid down his life to give every human being on the face of the planet that opportunity for redemption. So, um, Jesus can do that. We're followers of Jesus. We should certainly be showing love to other people. Okay. Now, I do have some information on a whole variety of topics, okay, dealing with relationships between, like, for instance, the Holy Spirit, Yahweh, and Jesus on my website, and I don't seem to see it on here, so I'm going to bring it up. It's thetrueway.xyz, and you can just click on a picture there. It takes you right to contents, and it picks a whole lot of different things dealing with arguments. It proves a lot of arguments wrong that a lot of people hold up as true when they try to support the Trinity. So, okay. Of course, even the definition of Trinity is argued about. among Trinitarians. But anyhow, okay, let's get back to this. Okay, I don't want to take forever. Okay, so getting back to Wes and what he had mentioned in Mark. Now, Mark, as far as we know, was originally written in Greek. And back then they thought a lot of the Greek Septuagint, which was actually written about 550 years after the writing of Isaiah. And the Septuagint does not put much emphasis on carrying over God's name, Yahweh. Okay, so like for instance, we have the examples of the great scroll of Isaiah and the Dead Sea Scrolls that were found, and they contain God's name, Yahweh, or the Tetragrammaton, or some people call him Jehovah. Now, the Septuagint, which again was written about 550 years later, is in Greek. It was a upcoming language, and it's becoming more and more popular. And again, Hebrew was spoken back in Jesus' day. Pilate, when he put up the pole for Christ to be impaled on, he had the sign on there. It was written in Hebrew, Greek, and Latin. So we know that it was spoken of back then. It was relevant enough. I'm sorry, to where those three languages had to be put on that pole. So let's get back to this. Mark 1, what he says. Okay. Verse 1, the beginning of the good news of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. And it says, as it is written in the prophets. Now, that's kind of actually a good point because it uses prophets, plural, more than one, because there are two different prophets referred to here. Okay. Behold, I send my messenger before your face who will prepare your way before you. Malachi 3:1. Well, that's kind of interesting. Now, let's just look at that verse. Okay. I send my messenger before your face. Okay. Now, this I is talking about Yahweh. But let's look at Malachi 3, verse 1. Behold, I send my messenger, and he will prepare the way before me. So that's kind of interesting. He's talking about himself. But in Mark, it says, will prepare your way before you. So it's not a direct quote, actually, from Malachi 3:1. So the I here, we know that's talking about Yahweh. He says he's going to send his messenger before your face. It's not saying my messenger before my face. It's interesting in Malachi, it says it that way. But here in Mark, it doesn't. It's talking about a different person. Now, let's continue on. Um, this is quoting the Septuagint. It is not quoting Isaiah word for word. The meaning is different, okay? A little bit different, okay? So the voice of one crying in the wilderness. Now, Isaiah 43 doesn't really start out that way, not from like the great scroll of Isaiah, okay, the original Isaiah. It says there's a voice crying to basically make the roads in the wilderness and the desert straight. It's a little bit of a difference. Make ready for the way of the Lord, no problem. Make his paths straight. Now, when we go to Isaiah 43, where did I put that? Here we go. Okay, let's look at verse 3. The voice of one who calls out, prepare the way of Yahweh in the wilderness. Make a level highway in the desert for our God. So it is talking about Yahweh here. But in Mark, It says, make the way the Lord, quoting the Septuagint, because the Septuagint would use the word Lord rather than Yahweh. So how could that be? So neither prophecy of Malachi 3 or Isaiah 40 have been completely fulfilled. They won't be fulfilled until Jesus returns. Okay. Now, if we go to Psalm chapter 2, let's look. Let's pick one here. Let's just do this. Okay, Psalm 2, the whole chapter. What do we have here? Well, it says, let's look at verse 2. The kings of the earth take a stand, and the rulers take counsel together against Yahweh, against his anointed, and against his anointed. His anointed is a separate person than what he is. Okay, that would be Christ. And verse 6, yet I have set my king on holy hill of Zion. I will tell of the decree. Yahweh said to me, you are my son. Today I've become your father. Who else could this be other than Christ? And it is not Yahweh. He's not talking to himself. You are my son. He's not talking to himself. He's talking to Jesus or Yeshua. And it says, ask of me and I will give the nations for your inheritance. Isn't that what Christ did? He inherited everything. God's not talking to himself here. It doesn't make any sense. He would inherit something that he already has. Okay. Doesn't make sense. And verse 12, give sincere homage to the Son. This is a type of worship. Worship means different things. So give sincere homage to the Son, lest he be angry and you perish on the way. For his wrath will soon be kindled. Blessed are all those who take refuge in him. So here we have the Son basically coming in the name of his Father. His Father's giving him all these things. So are they the same? No, they're not the same. So when you look back at Mark, which I just conveniently let's go like that. Okay, Mark 1. So when it says down here, it says the voice one crying in the wilderness. There's a cat. Whoop. Sorry about that. The voice of one crying in the wilderness, make ready the way of the Lord, make his path straight. The Lord, yeah, it is talking about Yahweh. It is officially talking about Jehovah. Yes, that's very, very, very true. But his son comes in his father's name. Okay. He's given authority. He inherits this stuff. So, no, that does not prove. With scrutiny, that does not prove or even indicate that Jesus is Yahweh. It can't when you look into it. However, the one thing that I do want to mention, I want to commend Wes on, was that he had referred to the original writings of Isaiah, where it does use God's name. And I have another video out dealing with a little bit about the Virgin Mary, which is very interesting. And it's interesting to compare the Greek version of Matthew, which is not the original Matthew. The original Matthew was written in Hebrew, and it talks about it. But I have another video which I put out tonight that shows that, again, the original scroll of Isaiah, written 550 years approximately before the Septuagint version, the Greek translation of Isaiah. The Septuagint version does not use God's name hardly at all. However, the original does, and it helps clarify a lot of things. And I do want to thank Wes for bringing that out, that actually that name should be there. And a lot of people, for some reason, don't like it in the Greek scriptures, but when the Greek scriptures quote the Old Testament, where it has God's name in there, If God's name was originally in a place, then shouldn't it be there today? So there's different reasons, superstitions and things why that name was taken out, but it was originally there, and it was only by man's decisions that was taken out. Some translations are putting it back in, just like the one that I had mentioned here, like Malachi here. Okay. It was originally in the Bible, what, 6,000 times, almost 7,000 or something like that. But here it says Yahweh, Yahweh, Yahweh. It's putting it back in where they belong. And that's what God wanted. He wants his name to be known. Who in the world would not want God's name to be known? So, anyhow, another interesting thing, if you go back to the website, thetrueway.xyz, a very nice one that I like is dealing with names. There it is, Bible names and their meanings. Excellent one. Again, the website or the most recent book is available for download. Jesus is coming quickly. Do we have the love to follow Christ? That's just an AI illustration of the spiritual New Jerusalem coming down out of heaven, and the nations getting their blessings from it. So, anyhow, I did want to thank Wes for bringing out that one point, although I would respectfully disagree with him that this passage actually shows that Jesus is Jehovah, because it doesn't make sense when you look at the original passages and look at the context, and you other look at other passages. It doesn't show it. It doesn't show the Son as being the Father. It it doesn't. And even early, I mean, I'm not going to say not early, but simple grammar just says a father can't be the son can't be the father. So I would admonish people to look for the truth. Okay, something that actually makes sense. So anyhow, I hope you all have a blessed day, and you're directed by Yahweh, and and I am not trying to diminish Christ's role in prophecy or his meaning for mankind at all. I personally search for truth, and hopefully we can all do that. Thank you, and good night. Oh my, I pushed something really wrong. Good night.